Conversations. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 2, and I'm delighted to have Mr. Colin Campbell with me. He's representing Christians Against Poverty, a charity that you may have heard of. They're having a huge impact in Scotland. There was a popular documentary that went out in the BBC showcasing their work. So welcome to Colin, and I'm very grateful for him for joining us to tell us a bit about his role and their work. So Colin, why don't you begin by introducing yourself better than I can and tell us what your role is at Christians Against Poverty.
Sure. Thanks, David. It's great to be here. I'm the Church Partnership Manager for Christians Against Poverty in Scotland. So that basically means I'm the first point of contact for any churches who are looking to establish a new CAP service in their locality. And I just take churches through that whole process of what's involved, finding out what's the right service for them to use, and getting people trained up for that and able to launch their service. So it's been an unusual year for us at CAP, as it's been for everybody, but we've been really encouraged to see churches now getting involved in starting new services and seeing new ministries happening even right now during COVID, which is great.
So what kind of area do you cover? Because you're reasonably near us in Erskine. What's your geographical remit, and how are you fulfilling that during COVID?
Yeah, well, my remit is all of Scotland. So I've been in this role since 2017. And my normal working pattern would be working from home, doing a lot of communication by phone and email, but also traveling around the country, going to meetings at churches, doing talks at churches. And we have obviously seen some of that curtailed because of COVID, but I was all ready and set up with the home office setup when everything hit. So I've been able to pretty much continue working as normal.
And tell us a bit more about some of those things that you mentioned. What are the sort of main features of the programs that Christians Against Poverty run? And just, as if someone who has had no experience of what you do, what do they look like, and what do they achieve in practicality?
Sure. Well, we have 42 different CAP services running in churches all across Scotland, and we have about 280 volunteers involved in running those services. Those services consist of our CAP Debt Help, which is free debt counselling provided in people's homes ordinarily, pre-COVID anyway. And also we have services that tackle some of the root causes of poverty. So we have our group-based services, which include our CAP job clubs for people who are unemployed to help them get back into work, and CAP Life Skills that provides people with budgeting and money savvy advice and how to have good relationships in the family unit, and our Fresh Start program, which helps people escape from life-controlling issues, find freedom from those issues, and be able to live the life they want to live. And we also have our CAP Money course, which is a 3-session budgeting course to help with financial literacy that churches can run in their community, church, workplaces. So there's a variety of different services, but all geared around tackling these underlying causes of poverty.
And what, from your work across the whole of Scotland, in Scotland as we find it today, what are those main underlying causes of poverty that you see frequently in your work?
Yeah, well, a lot of our clients, around 88% of them, have an income lower than the national average. And 56% of them live below the poverty line. So a lot of people are really trying to get by on not enough to pay everything that they're dealing with. Our clients have an average debt of over £16,000 and their income averages at £11,000. So there's a big problem with unmanageable debt. And in a lot of those cases, we have associated causes and effects because of that debt. We see people who have got into debt for a whole variety of reasons. For a majority, it's because of some kind of unexpected life event. So this isn't just about common sense or money or financial literacy. Sometimes the unexpected can completely knock the course of life. And we see people who are unable to afford their basics. And over half of our clients are sacrificing meals on a weekly basis due to debt. They're going without so that they can make sure that they're feeding their kids. We're seeing people who are paying to make sure that they have food, that they have electricity. Those kind of things are not being met because people are paying off debts, and the creditors that shout the loudest quite often get the attention because of that emotional pressure. And these effects all pile up. So we have clients who are attending their GP because of stress-related illness due to their debt situation. Over half of our clients have visited their GP because of their debt circumstances. And 67% of them say that debt has negatively affected their relationships. And that cascades down to the children. We have children being impacted by that. They don't have money to provide uniforms, to provide lunches. And of course, we're all aware of the increasing problem that there is with food poverty, particularly for children. So there's a whole cascade of issues caused when there isn't enough money to pay all of the bills and to deal with debt. And we are interested in not just providing people with a route out of that debt problem, but providing people with a really safe space where they are heard and where all of the different issues they're dealing with are recognized. And so it's a holistic approach to give people that sense of safety and headspace while they work themselves out of the situation that they're in.
And when you say, I mean, some of those figures are fairly shocking and heartbreaking, really, to try and empathise and imagine being over 100% of your income worth in debt. I can't do the math, but 11 grand versus 16 grand. That sounds overwhelming. And that's 16 grand on average of debt. I take it I'm presuming you're not talking about, long-term kind of manageable low interest plans. Is it the really bad screeching high interest debt that we all see on the adverts?
Well, debt is made up of a variety of things. So you'll have priority debts, such as things to do with rent arrears, council tax, and you'll have secondary debt like things like credit cards and loans that are unsecured. So there's a mixture of things in that debt pile, but on average, our clients have around 10 different debts that they're dealing with. And the average repayment term, if they were to just, pay off those without any alternative debt solution, would be over 26 years. So it's not sustainable in many cases. And so some form of intervention is required for them to be able to see that debt dealt with in a timely way.
And so presumably you can, with that kind of thing, you can step in and offer someone a new lease of life?
Absolutely. We see just the impact of making that personal visit in somebody's home. That alone can be a lifeline for people who are struggling with this whole stigma of having debt in the first place. So our approach in terms of meeting people in that safe space allows them to just unburden whatever's going on. Our debt centre managers are able to evaluate the whole picture of what people are dealing with and just be able to take the burden off our clients to just hand over all the paperwork to do with these debts. We send them down to head office where our debt advice team processes them and comes up with a livable budget for that client to be able to live off while making a single payment to CAP that is then dispersed to all of their creditors. So we step in as the middleman between them and their creditors, and any conversations they have to have, any inquiries from creditors that go to the client can say, CAP's dealing with me now, you need to speak to them. And we have built up a really positive reputation in the industry and have good relationships with a lot of the credit industries. So when a loan company or a credit card company knows that CAP has stepped in and has taken on this person as a client, their chances of being repaid have dramatically increased, because in a lot of situations they simply wouldn't be getting that debt over time because it's not sustainable. So we get a good response in terms of collaboration with creditors and reducing the amount of payments, stopping interest, and being able to see that client managing to pay off what they need to pay off over a reasonable period of time.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple of things there. One is there's a huge, it sounds like there's a big pastoral side to it in stepping into someone's house and meeting them where they are, which is powerful because a lot of people are struggling with money. But then there's also, I'm reminded of the text about, in the Bible where Jesus talks about his burden being light and not overly oppressive and overbearing. And it sounds like you're helping people feel something of the reality of what that looks like. But I'm going to then, that leads me to the theology of it. I'm going to be, I hope you don't find me too facetious, but it's just because I want to really get the true answer. You're called Christians against poverty. Why are Christians against poverty? Isn't there a verse in the Bible that says you'll always have the poor anyway?
Yes, absolutely. And we would love nothing more than to work ourselves out of relevance and eliminate poverty forever. But we know that poverty is part and parcel of the fallenness and the brokenness of our experience as human beings that have fallen out of that perfect creation relationship that God designed. But that doesn't mean that we have to be content with the suffering that poverty causes. And we see a thread right through Scripture, from the Old Testament right through to the New Testament, of God enjoining us to pay attention to those on the margins, those who are vulnerable, those who are excluded, the widows, the orphans, the foreigners, those who are at risk because of their circumstance of being abused, being subject to inordinate burdens in life. And that is part of our mission as Christians, to have an eye for those who are in that situation. And Isaiah 58 is one of our favorite chapters at CAP, enjoining us as Christians to pay attention to those who are in a situation less fortunate than we are, and make sure that part of our expression of faith as Christians is reaching out in support for people in that situation. And that isn't from some form of savior complex, because we know in doing this kind of service, our service managers, our frontline workers get as much blessing in the experience of engaging with people in these circumstances as those who are benefiting from it. It changes us, and it changes churches who start these ministries, because it forces you to have an eye for that which maybe you've been blind to. The people who have been stuck behind closed curtains in your community, the problems that have gone unseen, sometimes in your own church pews. But this opportunity to create practical help and support for something as mundane as money or debt issues can open up a journey for somebody that completely transforms their lives and creates an opportunity to show them that there is hope for their life. And we know we have an eternal hope, and we're able to offer that eternal hope of the gospel as well as part of our service.
Yeah, and I love the way you describe it, that there's not this sharp distinction between the eternal life Jesus gives us and redeeming us from our sins, but also releasing us from things that are oppressive in this life, that are, if you like, not part of his perfect kingdom. And as you were talking, I was reminded so much of the some of the Old Testament, the great Old Testament passages in Leviticus and Deuteronomy that speak about the year of Jubilee and the every 7 years years, letting the ground rest and cancelling people's debt so that over time there isn't this oppressive accumulation that no one has any hope of paying off. And it just seems to me, while we don't live in an Old Testament theocracy, that like you said, that thread runs through that poverty does seem to be equated with oppression and a burden we're charged with loosening if we can, from what I'm hearing you saying. And also that it can be part, from what you're saying, of Christians who get involved in this, in their discipleship and in their serving.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because we see these hints in the Old Testament, in what was initiated by God, in those kind of patterns of, creating Jubilee, creating cities of refuge. These are all clues to us of God's plan for how we should interact with the fallen circumstances around us. And I'm not sure how good Israel were at fulfilling that long-term, that plan of Jubilee, but our head office building in Bradford is called Jubilee Centre. And that idea of there being a point where you just say, okay, enough is enough. Freedom is required from this burden is integral to our sense of commission as Christians. And we know that people struggle in a variety of different ways, and being able to provide that practical support. It's not about it's not about humoring people who have got into a difficult situation because of their own fault. As I said earlier, our client statistics show that a lot of people get into these circumstances for reasons beyond their control. And so the principle of mercy and the principle of grace, the principle of redemption, has to be key in our approach and our motivation for doing what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, as you're speaking, it's so obvious that it's a great cause of misery in the society in which we live is unsustainable debt. Do you, in Christians Against Poverty, in any way advocate for change at the wider level? Even perhaps do you want to comment on the fact that in many ways our entire society, when you look at our banking system, creates debt in order to, well, someone would argue, in order to get the economy going, and that's what everything revolves around. It's only been that for not that. It's relatively close to this time in modern history when we really started organising things like that. Do you think that we're seeing that has consequences all the way down to the clients you deal with that maybe could do with restructuring higher up?
Yeah, absolutely, because credit in its current form is a fairly recent invention. I mean, it was only the 70s that credit cards became a thing. Probably took longer to kind of filter into mainstream use in Scotland. And we're all familiar with the credit boom of the 2000s and then the resulting crash in 2008. I mean, you could get mortgages without providing proof of income in the 2000s. People won't believe us when we talk about what was possible then, reflecting on what's happened since. And this is all part of a wider, socio-economic picture. So we're very much engaged in lobbying government and relationships with other agencies that are providing advocacy on these issues that affect those who are most vulnerable in society to these trends. And we've recently published our client report for 2019, which gives the various statistics and impacts and benefits that our clients have experienced. And also the reason for us speaking up on behalf of those patterns that we see continuing as threads and becoming increasingly an issue. We've seen council tax arrears becoming an increasingly large percentage of people's priority debt over the last 10 years. Things like that become entrenched and become something that needs addressed. Child poverty, food poverty, utility poverty has been a big thing. And those are trends that we become aware of and that we speak into. Digital exclusion has been a big thing that's been exposed during COVID, but it's something we were already aware of. Over 20% of our clients do not have a device on which they can access online services. And increasingly, our state services and frameworks are being shifted to online only. Citizens advice bureaus are closing down. Post offices, banks are being closed down. Sometimes people are limited because of travel, being able to get those basic services that they need in order to manage their life situation well. And so part of what we do is engaging with government on these issues. This year was actually the 20th anniversary of CAP in Scotland. We opened our first debt centre in Liberty Church, Dunfermline, in the year 2000, and we had plans for celebration events this year, which obviously were put on hold because of COVID. But we published this report and these findings, and we have been engaging with government to provide a voice to that.
And presumably that's online, and I could link that in the YouTube description box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the full report is available at our website at capuk.org/client report Scotland.
Great. Well, the link will be in the description box for this conversation, so people can avail themselves of that, and I think it'll be good for them to see some of the real life stories and impact there. What about a bit more locally? I understand the CAP are looking to make inroads in working in the community where we find ourselves in Erskine. Can you tell us a bit about that development?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our debt centre model works is it's based on postcode coverage. So first of all, there needs to be a church in a locality that partners with CAP in order to make the service available. And then depending on the capacity of that debt help service, they will cover certain postcode areas. So we have a debt centre running in Inverclyde, run by Hope Community Church. And the nearest centre to yourselves, other than that, would be our Glasgow South Debt Centre, which covers Newton Mearns, Pollokshaws, that area. So we currently don't have coverage covering the area around Renfrew, Erskine, Bishopton, Paisley. And so I've been in contact with some churches locally over the last couple of years about remedying this, and Bridge Christian Fellowship in Erskine have been exploring what it would look like to run a CAP debt centre for these postcode areas in Renfrewshire. And they're currently looking at recruiting somebody to fill the role of the debt centre manager. So we're looking for somebody right now who would be interested in pioneering, setting up that service for a minimum of 2 days per week, being able to deliver this support to clients in person. Obviously, right now, because of COVID, the support is being done socially distanced in church buildings or over the phone. But hopefully we'll be going back to delivering that support in the home and facilitating the journey for those clients through to debt freedom. So if there is anybody who's interested in getting involved in that initiative, either churches looking to link in and be a partner in running that service, or individuals who want to volunteer as either a debt centre manager or maybe as a volunteer or a befriender if you're only available an hour or two a week, then get in touch with Gavin.Chittick at Bridge Christian Fellowship or myself. You can contact me as well.
Great, and I can also add these contact details in the description box, so hopefully there's someone out there listening who's just been waiting for a new opportunity to help people with debt, and that's we can certainly pray for that as a church, that you find the right person and we'll begin to break ground and break some strongholds in the area which we are, because it's almost certainly where we are, as you said, behind the curtains, people that we don't know about are struggling with this.
It's a great opportunity for somebody who's really become aware of some of these issues that have been exposed during COVID. Over 80% of our clients experience social isolation. And that was that's the figures from before COVID. So I can only imagine the proportions now. All of us have become aware of the negative impacts on our mental well-being from being isolated because of COVID. For some people struggling with debt and not being able to pay their bills, this is an everyday reality. And so if somebody is looking for a way to give back, to create some space in their week, to be part of something that brings really practical transformative effects to people in their community, this is a great opportunity to explore that. And we are really encouraged to see churches in Scotland now responding to what they've been seeing happening and saying, okay, yes, we've got a lot to deal with. Yes, life's a bit different. We can't all have our services like we normally do, but at the same time, we don't want to stop the mission of the church. And what can we do to help? And so it's been really encouraging to see new debt centres opening in Irvine recently. We opened a new debt centre there at Fullerton Parish Church in the summer, and we currently have a team training from Troon and Ayr to open a debt centre there in the new year. So churches are responding, and they are seeing the opportunity to bring something new to the community, and Renfrewshire absolutely needs it.
I think that's so helpful the way you frame it as well, because often you do find people in church who are very passionate about their faith and want to get involved with the mission of the church, but they maybe think, well, I'm not very good at evangelizing, I'm not very good at sharing my faith and talking to people randomly about it. And this is just such a practical and concrete way to show your faith, to reach out, to be involved in the kingdom, but without having to maybe do things that make you freak out, given your personality type or whatever. And especially, and I think as well, I certainly find in Erskine, a lot of people are very caring and compassionate, and would be good at showing some of that empathy, and they often feel like they just don't have the words when it comes to the the kind of God stuff, but this is just a wonderful way for people to be able to show that care.
Yeah, it's true, and people kind of bump on that term evangelism, particularly I think in Scotland, because we are not talking about somebody who's necessarily able to go out on the streets and proclaim the good news. This is about relational evangelism. And if you're somebody who has empathy, who's able to come alongside somebody in their suffering, be a listening ear, and be able to go work at their pace through the journey of life that they're dealing with, and able to share your faith just in a very natural way about your own experience and the impact it's had on you, that's all that's required to expose people to the truth of the gospel. And we provide full training for all of our frontline workers, both on the debt advice side of things, the debt counselling side of things, but also that pastoral aspect of how to come alongside people, how to share in an evangelistic way in the context of the service, how to offer prayer, and how to do it in appropriate ways, and how to put on opportunities for clients to engage and be included in the church life and church events. So that's all part of what we provide in our training, and also the ongoing support once people are part of our frontline network. There's ongoing opportunities to engage with others in similar roles and receive training year on year.
It was very bleak. There was nothing to look forward to at all, and nobody that could help me, it seemed. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. My mental health by this point was really starting to suffer. My mind was constantly thinking, how am I going to get through tomorrow? What are we going to eat tomorrow? It was horrendous, actual horrendous, and a very depressing, knowing there was no light at the end of the tunnel for you. It was soul destroying, actual soul destroying to find yourself in that position. This is my life. I know it is a pile of debt letters. Colin had phoned me and he had said, I will make an appointment and come out to the house. Was I fine with that? And I says, that's fantastic, absolute fantastic that somebody was actually going to come to me. Made me feel really comfortable right away, very non-judgmental, and cracked a few jokes, and we actually, by the time Colin was finished that night, I was laughing. Basically told me, get everything that you've had in the last couple of years and just give it all to me. Colin also told me as well that they would deal with any phone calls. I was just to hand the number to them and explain to them, you know, that Cap is going to speak for me. So that worry was out my mind as well. I didn't have to take any phone calls and explain anything to people. So I think that after even that one visit, I felt there was hope at the end of that. It was such a relief for somebody else to be able to sort through this mess and make sense of it. And it was hard to keep to the budget. It really was a struggle, but I managed to get through and I managed to keep to the budget. I remember an envelope coming through from the postman. I ran down the stairs and there was a confirmation that, you know, you were debt free. You finally don't owe anybody any money. And it was the first thing when I got my letter. I was sitting out and the first thing was being aware of the birds singing in the trees and the sun was shining and there was just a calmness. And I thought, for the first time in my life, I've actually got a life. And it was the best thing. It was the best feeling in my life. Really, it was like I unzipped myself and that's the old Christina there and this is the new Christina here because I just not that person anymore. Definitely not that person anymore. Life's great and I'm living it and loving it. Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Well, it sounds to me like there's a really exciting opportunity for someone who could be starting a new ministry in Renfrewshire. So, Colin, thank you so much for giving us the time today, taking your time out to share with us, even over the internet, what CAP do. I certainly feel like I have a renewed understanding of how deep the problems are, but also an awful lot of hope that Christians Against Poverty are so engaged in addressing this. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of folks who will be tuning in when they say that. So thank you very much, and thank you on behalf of our church for the work that you're doing in the area, and we will commend that role to folks and also commend it to prayer that the right person will be found.
Yes, absolutely. And we just encourage you all in what you're doing, and that there are opportunities to see people make progress right now, even during COVID. So we bless you in all that you're doing.